Hello, my name is Ehroar, and in this video I'll be going over the new Stasis subclass on Titan, the Behemoth, and I'll be doing a quick crash course on the subclass itself, followed by a build. And the thing about Titan right now is we are limited to one aspect, and that aspect only has one fragment slot, but trust me, that will not slow us down at all. And this build is gonna be really crazy. So first, going over the subclass itself, starting with the Super Glacial Quake. Once you're fully charged with super energy, you will summon a Stasis Gauntlet, and your main attack will be a supercharged version of your Shiver Strike. Then your secondary attack will slam your Gauntlet down to create a shockwave that freezes targets and sends out crystals to freeze additional ones. And the final thing about this super is you can sprint through crystals or frozen targets to shatter them instantly. So overall, this super is pretty interesting, and there's a lot of different things you can do with it. Then looking at our first ability on the subclass, that's going to be the Shiver Strike Melee, and pretty much what this does is when you use your melee attack, you leap forward into the air and slam into the nearest enemy, which will slow and push them back. Also, as you see, if there are enemies close by, it will also slow those enemies. And overall, this melee is decent, but definitely not worthy of making a build around it. The only thing that is cool about this melee attack is that if you hold down your melee button, you can go further before you actually use the attack itself. And on Titan, we have the same three grenades that we had on Warlock. The one we'll be using for this build will be Glacier Grenade once again. And when you throw that, it will create a cluster of crystals that will freeze nearby targets. And every single time you shoot one of those crystals, it will shatter and do damage to nearby targets. Then the aspect we have unlocked on Titan is Chiroclasm. And this will do two things. It will give you a much longer slide. Then the second thing, which is going to be more important, is when you slide into crystals or frozen enemies, it will instantly shatter all those things. And it doesn't have to be only your crystals or your frozen enemies. If your teammate creates crystals for you or freezes enemies, you can slide right through any of those things and shatter them. Then, as we mentioned at the beginning of the video, this aspect limits us to only one fragment. So even though there are 6 fragments in the game, we can only use one, and that will be Whisper of Shards. And what this one does is whenever you shatter a stasis crystal, you will get a buff called Improved Ability Regeneration for 5 seconds. Then as you destroy additional crystals, you'll get plus 5 seconds every single time, and that will cap out at 10 seconds. And what this buff does is it gets your grenade back very quickly, and you're probably already thinking that this will pair really well with the aspect where we can slide through the crystal and get the full 10 seconds of the buff instantly, and you would be correct. That is exactly what we're going to do. And one thing to note about this buff is that it's going to be tied to your base cooldown of your grenade, so the higher your discipline stat is, the better. So those are all the tools we'll have on the Behemoth subclass to work with. So now moving on to the build part of the video. Starting off with our exotic armor piece, it'll be Armamentarium, which will allow us to have 2 glacier grenades, which means we can create more crystals and slide through more crystals, which means we get the improved ability regeneration buff more often. Then the important weapon for this build will be the Deafening Whisper with the perk Wellspring. So if you're familiar with the Martyr's Retribution with Demolitionist, this is going to be very similar but void, but unlike Demolitionist, Wellspring will work for all of your abilities, not just your grenade. Every time you get a kill with the weapon, you will get ability energy for any ability you're missing, and if you're missing multiple abilities at once, the energy you get from each kill will be split evenly between them. And now moving on to the mods, the first one will be Blast Radius, which will allow us to become Chargeable Light when we get kills with a Deafening Whisper, and every single time we get 2 kills, we'll get 1 stack of Chargeable Light, and we will cap out at ×2. Now with those stacks of Chargeable Light, we'll be doing a few things. The first one will be Firepower. While Chargeable Light regain a portion of your grenade energy when you use your grenade, consuming 1 stack of Chargeable Light. And the important thing to note about solar Chargeable Light mods is that they stack with other copies of themselves. So if we now look at the other mods we'll be using Firepower, then we'll also be using Firepower, and finally we will also be using Firepower. So 4 copies of Firepower, then 1 copy of Blast Radius. So how this works is when we're Chargeable Light ×2, we throw our grenade and we pretty much get like 66% of our grenade instantly. So we can throw 3 grenades pretty much without even doing anything. Then if we pair that with the aspect and fragment that we're using, we'll get that improved ability regeneration buff for our grenade, which means we can now easily throw 4 grenades in a row without even doing anything. So now all we have to do is throw in some kills with the Deafening Whisper in between to proc the Wellspring perk, then also get more stacks of Chargeable Light, and now we can pretty much do this combo forever. As you'll see in this Lost Sector gameplay, the way this will work is you want to get Chargeable Light ×2 first, then you want to throw your Glacier Grenade, which will do a few things. The first thing it will do is create a cluster of crystals, then you'll also get roughly 66% of your grenade back instantly because of the 4 Firepower mods we're using. Then you will slide through the crystal, which will instantly shatter it, and also proc the Fragment perk, which will help us get grenades back even quicker. And then after you do that, you want to get a double kill with the Deafening Whisper, That way you get another stack of chargeable light because you just used one. And when you get that double kill, you will proc Will Spring twice, which will also help get our grenade back even quicker. And as you see, pretty much the result of all this is you have infinite glacier grenades that you slide through and shatter everything in sight. And the final few things to finish out the build, I have the Fallen Guillotine on, which is the sword from last season. It's still one of the best DPS options in the game, so I have that for boss damage. Then I'm using Monte Carlo, but you can pretty much use whatever exotic primary you want. Anyways, this has been my build for the Stasis Titan subclass Behemoth. Thanks for watching.